What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another FPL video on the channel. And in today's one, we are going to be looking at my transfer plans for double game week 33. But before we do get onto that, here is a quick update on how we've performed in game week 32 so far. We've got 55 points, but there still is a couple more games to be played, right? There's Bournemouth versus Fulham, and there is also Newcastle versus Crystal Palace. So I've actually still got a total of 6 players plus my captain still left to play. So a lot could change. But yeah, currently we're on 55 points, and I do have a green arrow up to 382k. So hopefully after the Crystal Palace and Newcastle game, hopefully the green arrow becomes bigger and better. But with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to my transfer plans for game week 33. Alright guys, so first things first, I just wanted to quickly show you what my team is looking like currently for double game week 33. And bear in mind, I've got this team with 2 free transfers. So as you guys can see, in goal we've got David Raya. We then got Saliba, Konate and Kuzanov for the defense. Now, Kuzanov, I guess you could say, is pretty much an issue because since I've brought him in, he's actually not got any minutes at all, which is very confusing because before I brought him in my wildcard for game week 30, he had played pretty much every game since moving to Manchester City. So yeah, very confused by that one, but I just have to hope and pray that Kuzanov will play at least one of the games in the double, right? I don't really know what the reason is for him being away from the squad, but yeah, really hoping he can play. But yeah, this is how the defense is looking. On paper, assuming all my players play, I don't think it's too bad. In the midfield, we've then got Mohamed Salah, Ismail Assar, Phil Foden and Eberechi Eze. Now, again, Foden, a bit of an issue, not going to lie. I'm hoping that the injury isn't too serious. If it is, then I might end up taking him out. I'm not totally sure yet, but I am hoping he'll be fit and available for this double game week. And then up front, we do have Alexander Isak, a big boy, Jean-Philippe Mateta, and Omar Marmoush. And of course, we've got the assistant manager on Eddie Howe. And then on the bench, we've got Areola, Gordon, Nico Williams, and Mikalenko. So this is what my team is looking like. And I've got 2 free transfers to use, right? So at the moment, currently, my thinking is to use both free transfers. Use one of them to go from Eddie Howe to Mikel Arteta. Now, I want to speak on the assistant manager first, right? So that is my plan at the moment, to go from Eddie Howe to Mikel Arteta and actually avoid Saka, right? That would mean for me, I'd be avoiding Saka. Now, first things first, I don't think it's totally a bad idea avoiding Saka because I don't think he'll play both games. Well, he'll play both games, yes, but he won't start both games and get 90 minutes across both games. I expect him to get maybe 30 minutes in one game and then maybe a 90 minute in the other game, or maybe a 60 minute in the other game. But all in all, I don't think he'll start both games. Maybe one start and an early sub and then one game off the bench, right? So with that being said, I don't think it's a bad shout to avoid Bukayo Saka. And in terms of the other Arsenal assets, none of them really convince me. So that's why at the moment I'm thinking to use my third Arsenal slot for this double game week on Mikel Arteta. Now, another thing I want to talk about, right? The reason why I want to go for Mikel Arteta, and this is not something I necessarily wanted to do, but with the way that the results have gone in the Premier League, it's actually sort of narrowed down my options, in my opinion, right? It's certainly narrowed down my options, and now I feel like I'm left with no real genuine table bonus opportunities, right? Because when you guys look at the fixtures for double game week, right, for double game week 33 and the table bonus opportunities, they're not really good at all. Now, my original plan was to actually go for Marco Silva, right? Fulham at home to Chelsea. That what I thought it would be a table bonus game, given the way the results would go. You know, I expected Chelsea to beat Ipswich, and I assumed that maybe Bournemouth will beat Fulham. Obviously, at the time of recording, that game hasn't been played yet, but yeah, regardless of what the Bournemouth and Fulham result is now, it's not going to be a table bonus, right? But I was hoping that, you know, Chelsea would beat Ipswich and Bournemouth would beat or draw against Fulham. And I also thought Brighton would beat Leicester as well, right? And that didn't happen. So Brighton drew to Leicester, Chelsea drew to Ipswich, and basically now it just means that Fulham versus Chelsea is not a table bonus game, right? This is how the table is currently looking. You can see here, Fulham, even if they lose, right, Bournemouth will overtake Fulham and Fulham will drop down to 9th place. That's just simply not enough, right? It's simply not enough because Chelsea are now in 6th place when I thought Chelsea would be in the 4th or 5th position at least, right? But yeah, Chelsea dropped points to Ipswich and Brighton also dropped points to Leicester, right? So with that being said, for me, the table bonus opportunities aren't great, right? You've got, yeah, literally I think Southampton versus West Ham, Everton versus Man City, You've got Crystal Palace against Arsenal in the second game of the double game week, but I'm already tripled up on Crystal Palace. And you've also got Leicester versus Liverpool, Ipswich versus Arsenal, and Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham against Nottingham Forest. And I don't like any of these options at all, right, guys? I don't like it. I think they all stink. A part of me was thinking maybe I take a gamble on Ange, but you know what? After that result against Wolves, losing 4-2, Spurs are absolutely terrible. They're diabolical, bruv. They are diabolical, and they're just such a bad team. I am not putting trust in that terrible, terrible Tottenham team. So I'm staying far, far away from Ange. So now it comes down to there's no table bonus game, so I might as well pick a manager that has a double game week. Now, I could have gone for Emery, but I don't like Emery. It's just not good enough for me. Like, the way I like to play it, right? Let me quickly explain. If I'm going to go for a table, two options, right? One is a table bonus game, but a logical table bonus game where I think that the underdog has a genuine chance of beating the team that's meant to or supposed to win, or I pick sort of a guaranteed win. Right, a fixture where I expect the team that I'm betting on to comfortably win the game. I don't think Aston Villa comfortably beat Newcastle. I don't think Aston Villa comfortably beat Man City. Right, so with that being said, I think the both games can go either way. So that's why I don't really like Emery. Now that's why Emery, and that's sort of the reason why it's led me down to picking Arteta, because I think Arsenal will beat Ipswich and I think Arsenal will beat Crystal Palace. Right, so that's why I genuinely believe Arteta might just be the best player for my assistant manager. And it's unfortunate because I did want to take another gamble on a table bonus fixture. But yeah, as I said, bro, there's just simply no good table bonus fixtures. So yeah, I think I'm going to go for Arteta. And the reason why I think, look, Ipswich are, they're not a good side, right? So I do see Arsenal winning this game. I know it is just after the second leg in the Champions League. However, still on paper, I still believe it's a good fixture for Arsenal, and I still believe, even though it's away from home, that they will win this game. And then against Crystal Palace as well, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some rotation from Crystal Palace in this fixture, because if we let's have a quick look at Crystal Palace's fixture schedule coming up, right? They've got a lot of fixtures, which does include an FA Cup semi-final. So as you guys can see, they play Newcastle after just playing Man City. Then on the weekend, they've got Bournemouth, and then another midweek game against Arsenal away from home, and then they have the FA Cup semi-final. Now, we know that's a big game for Crystal Palace, so I believe potentially we could see some rotation here from Oliver Glasner, and maybe some of the key Crystal Palace players may get benched or may not start the game. Definitely an early sub at least. So I believe, Crystal Palace will sort of be saving their energy for this big game against Aston Villa in the FA Cup, which is why I do actually see Arsenal winning this game pretty comfortably against Crystal Palace. And that's why I've decided to go for Arteta, right? So that's sort of what I'm thinking at the moment. I think I'm like 90% sure I'm going to be going for Mikel Arteta. Now, the second transfer I've got in mind, right, that's just sort of the assistant manager stuff sort of covered, right? The second transfer I've got in mind is to take out Anthony Gordon and bring in Morgan Rogers. Yes, that's right. I'm going back there. I've got like a love-hate relationship with this guy, with Morgan Rogers. But the guy's been cooking, and I think he's the only Aston Villa player that I can trust to start both games with a double game week that they've got, right? Aston Villa have a double against Newcastle at home and Man City away, right? And I would like to take a gamble. Don't get me wrong. I would like to take a gamble, maybe a Marcus Rashford, maybe on a Marcus Asensio. But I just simply want to pick a player that I know is going to start both games. And I just can't say that about those players. Even Ollie Watkins, right? I can't even trust that he'll start both games. And I just don't like that. And it's frustrating because, when the likes of Asensio play, when the likes of Rashford play, they do pretty well for FPL in terms of getting points. But I would just rather go for Rodgers, man, because look, as frustrating as Rodgers can be sometimes as an FPL asset, especially for me this season, personally, when I've owned Morgan Rogers, it's not really gone well. More times than not, he's always blanking, and he only returns when I put him on the bench. But I just have to hope and pray that now he can deliver when he will be in my starting 11 if I do go for him. But yeah, Rodgers, at the end of the day, right, the guy's made of absolute steel, and he doesn't get rotated. Emery plays him all the time. So I honestly believe Rodgers will play both games, right, based off what we've seen so far this season. So, and I think he's the only player that will play both games in this double game week for Aston Villa, right? So yeah, for me, I think, it's simple as that, man. Go for Rodgers against Newcastle and Man City away. And the thing is with Aston Villa as well, they sort of similar. They follow the fixture schedule of Crystal Palace, right? Exactly the same thing. They've got the Champions League, so they've got PSG in the second leg. They've then got the Premier League game against Newcastle, and then another Premier League game against Man City midweek, and then again on the weekend they've got Crystal Palace in the FA Cup. So they've got a lot of games, which means a lot of rotation in my opinion. And I just think Rodgers is the only one really that we can guarantee will start both games. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go for Morgan Rodgers, and that will be for Anthony Gordon. Now I do want to point out, right, if I was to go through the move of taking out Anthony Gordon, bringing in Morgan Rodgers, it would actually mean that I would be benching Alexander Isak in at game week 33. Now, probably not the best thing to be doing really, because I do think Isak could actually get a return against Aston Villa, but I just simply can't, he has to go on the bench, realistically. I can't play bench boost, and he has to go on the bench, man. I've got to play my players that have a double game week over Alexander Isak, in my opinion, even though I do have a feeling that maybe one of my 3 Crystal Palace players may get benched in the second game against Arsenal. I still feel like I've just got to play them because they just do have the extra fixture, and you never know, they might not get benched. That's just what I think might happen, but it's not a guarantee, right? Glasner might still want to play his starting front 3 of Sarr, Eze and Mateta in the second fixture against Arsenal, right? So yeah, I've got to start my double game weekers. And I will say though, if Foden is injured, and this is another thing that I quickly want to talk about, right? If Foden is injured, let's just say we quickly bring in Arteta, right? Because there could be a chance that I take a -4 this week. Now, I do one or two things. Let's say Foden is injured and is confirmed by Pep in his press conference. Maybe he's out for a couple of weeks. I don't know. But if it does seem like he won't play both games in this double game week, I've got 2 choices. I bench Foden, right? And I start Alexander Isak. I wouldn't really mind that, to be fair. Or I take a hit and I bring in someone else that has a double game week. Now, maybe I take a punt on one of the Aston Villa players. Maybe I take a punt on maybe Kevin De Bruyne. You know, he had a really, really good game against Crystal Palace. And I think he said in a post-match press conference that, you know, this was like the first time in a while he was playing without pain. So maybe a punt on De Bruyne for a -4 hit could be a play, but I don't know if it's worth it to bench Alexander Isak. That's one thing I will say. I don't know if it's worth doing to bench Alexander Isak, right? So I do think De Bruyne long-term could be quite a good pick, but still, if Foden's injured, I think the play will just be to bench him. I think that would be the play. Bench him if he's not going to be available for the 2 games and start Alexander Isak. That's what I will most likely do if Foden is injured. But as things stand, I think this is most likely what I'll be doing for game week 33, man. Arteta in, Rodgers in. And I think that's the play, man. I really, really do think that's the play. In terms of future game weeks, 34, I'll be using my free hit, right? So I'm not really going to go through what my free hit team is going to look like. We'll definitely cover that next game week. But yeah, I think after that, then we move on to game week 35. My team actually does look pretty decent. And one thing I will say is, right, there is a chance I do bench boost in game week 35, right? There is a chance that I do bench boost because I think, you know, time is ticking. Time is running out, and it's either game week 35, 36, or 38 for me. 38, I do kind of like, but at the same time, I think there could be a lot of rotation. I guess it depends on what teams I've got my players from, because I think, you know, teams like Man City, teams like Villa, teams like Newcastle, Chelsea, they're not going to be rotating much because they're battling for top 5. But teams like Arsenal and Liverpool on the last day of the season, they could be rotating a lot. And, you know, I've already got Konate, I've got Salah, I've got Saliba, I've got Raya. I wouldn't be surprised if in the last game of the season, maybe Saliba doesn't play, maybe Raya doesn't play, because they just have nothing to play for. And the same could be said for maybe Konate as well, maybe even Salah, right? So for me, it's like game week 38 bench boost. I'm not totally sure if I want to go there. So yeah, for me, I think, you know, game week 35 or 36, I think it's got to be one of those 2 weeks. And this is how my team does look at the moment in game week 35 with 1 free transfer. It's not too bad at all. It's not too bad. I'd say the one annoying thing is I've got Triple Palace against Nico Williams. That's not really what you want. I actually don't mind Konate against Chelsea away. I think Chelsea are really, really poor, so I don't mind that. I'd have to hope that Kuzunov starts. I'd have to, you know, hope that Raya and Saliba starts. But all in all, I think game week 35 might be the best week for me to bench boost. And I've got 1 free transfer as well. Initially, I was actually thinking Isak out. Yes, I know that's kind of crazy, but honestly, Isak out for Beto is what I want to do. And I just want to go for a sort of a rogue differential pick, right? 3.8% ownership and really, really good fixtures for the remainder of the season. You know, in 35, he's got Ipswich, 36 Fulham away, and in 37, Southampton at home. I really, really do like those three fixtures. Of course, in 38, he's got Newcastle away, which is pretty tough, but I'm willing to take the gamble, I think, on Beto. So that's one thing I was thinking about. But another option could be maybe to see, if I'm going to bench boost this week, I think ideally I'd want to get rid of Nico Williams because I've got triple Palace against Nico Williams, which isn't ideal. So maybe I'd want to get rid of Nico Williams. Maybe I bring in a second Everton defender, right? Maybe I bring in O'Brien, for example. That could be a play. But maybe I take out as well maybe Ismaila Shah. That could also be a play. But if I do bench boost in 35, I think I'd want to keep Isak and maybe upgrade the bench instead. I mean, could I go for an Everton midfielder? Maybe I go for Decore instead. You know, maybe I keep Isak and go for Decore, but I'm not too sure how I feel about that. But yeah, I'd say that definitely bench boost 35 is on the cards. And look, at the moment, it's kind of hard to know what I'm going to do for sure because remember, there is also a chance of another double game week in game week 36. And a blank in 37. Remember, the teams that go through to the final, to the FA Cup final, have a decent chance of doubling in game week 36. So if Man City go through, and let's say Man City and Crystal Palace go through, that would be the best thing for me because I'm already tripled up on City, I'm already tripled up on Palace. So if they go through to the final and they double in 36, I'll be prepared for that double. Of course, I think Bournemouth would have a double as well because in 37, it would mean that City blank. So Bournemouth, their fixture against Man City would get moved to 36 and Wolves will have a double as well who play against Palace in 37. So maybe I could also bring in some Wolves players and Bournemouth players. But yeah, that's all if buts and maybes, right? So it's kind of hard to know for sure what I'm going to do at this point in time. But yeah, that's just sort of me rambling. I know I've sort of gone on a bit of a tangent there, but I'm just sort of getting all my thoughts out to you guys, really. It's kind of hard to plan for the future. It all depends on what happens in the FA Cup semi-finals, which is next week, I do believe. So yeah, we'll know soon enough, you know, what the future looks like. But yeah, for now, I'd say the plan is for game week 33. Rodgers in, Arteta in, and then, yeah, man, we just go from there. So, yeah, thank you guys for watching, man. I know, again, I went on a bit of a ramble. So, yeah, sorry about that. But, yeah, that's going to be the end of today's video. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, smash a like on the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. And, yeah, it's been your boy, FPL Ryan. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. But until then, I'm out. Peace.